This session is a continuation of what we talked about before, which is what are things that successful businesses can pass along to startups and businesses that are on the learning part of the quality curve. What are some best practices, or either in terms of strategy or in terms of hard business lessons that we can tell both from companies that have been successful here, as well as people like our outside folks who have seen a lot of companies across the world. So it's a question where we're going to sort of leave it open for them to give some suggestions, and hopefully we can have the opportunity for some questions. We're not going to have a reasonable amount of time. And so if you have a question for anyone, I'm not sure exactly if we're going to do microphones or a note. There's some microphones around. Just wave your hand. Someone will come to you. So let me kick this off. Hamad Al-Shamari, to my left, is Executive Director of Mubdala Aerospace. How am I doing? Close? Close enough? 80%. Quality, not good enough, but for a moderator, adequate. Can you talk a little bit about the kinds of challenges that you've faced in developing your quality assurance programs to allow you to be a supplier to some of the most sophisticated industries in the world?
Thank you, sir. Well, I think let me take a step back. When we talk about Abu Dhabi Vision 2030, the key element of that vision is a knowledge-based economy, diversifying away from oil and gas into specific, industries that are very competitive, very global, and in that nature, it is not an easy task to say I'm going to establish an industry that I'm going to be competing with the likes of the US, Europe, Asia, and even Latin America. So there is two elements to aerospace strategy and what we've done here in Abu Dhabi. Number one, there was an element of maintenance, repair, overhaul. And luckily enough, we are a major operator in aviation sector, be it commercial and defense and military. So from that perspective, we do have sufficient quality systems structure within the UAE. The GCAA does apply rigorous processes and procedures coming down from FAA and EASA in Europe. So from that perspective, we were very comfortable in what we were doing. Getting into the new element of the industry, which was manufacturing, getting into composites of some of the leading, most modern aircrafts and platforms that are sold today, such as the A380, the 787, the 777, the 340. That was a much challenging task, to be honest with you, for us, because the bodies within the UAE, the Emirates of Abu Dhabi, did not gear up for manufacturing quality and safety assurances. So that was a challenge. And we depended heavily on our partners, namely Boeing and Airbus, to help us establish those policies and procedures for within our plants, within our manufacturing capabilities. And at the same time, we've worked with them to talk to the regulatory bodies such as GCAA, the Department of Transport here in Abu Dhabi, to talk about what are the elements of success when creating a quality system for manufacturing. So today, one of my biggest challenges is that Strata, for example, is certified by EASA in Europe. We're going through a process now where Boeing is helping us get a certification from FAA in the US. I don't have a regulatory body in the UAE that I can talk to that can enhance and help me with that bridging. The FAA and EASA are not normally geared up to talk to industry per se, but they like to talk to the local authorities, and then the local authorities deploy that capabilities, deploy that quality measurement and process within the industry. That is one of the elements of challenge that I have when it comes to aerospace and aerospace industry in Abu Dhabi.
Are there lessons that you've learned that you think that that you could advise other startups or mid-businesses that are getting into the high-tech area?
I think there is a couple of areas that new industries that are going to be established, or anybody who's going to be interested in something new. I can't think of a whole lot of industries that you're going to be able to create from scratch in this down world. At the end of the day, everything has been done. There are elements and segments of it that are different. So definitely go look, find the best in class. It is not a problem, it is not a default of a country or an entity to actually find the best entities in the world, partners that have done it, and learn from them. You do have a problem with a competitive advantage and people not wanting to create competitors for their markets and for their segments, but there's ways around it. So research as much as possible your competitors, your partners, the qualities that are established in the world. The second element, which is very, very important, I think, in my mind, is that finding the right partner is a key for success. And immediately identify your quality needs. I come back from a military background, and I've had always this analogy of, if you want to understand how an individual or organization look at quality, think about the way they look at it, the way they go about manning it. So if you're the Air Force commander, for example, and you have the top 10 performing officers within your staff, and now you're going through the positioning of all these 10 staffs and saying, where am I going to align those people? And if you look at the top 2 or 3 individuals and say, one of those individuals is going to be my quality or my safety officer, then that is a commander who's he or she, of course, is very focused on quality and safety. But if they go to that 10th and 9th most ranked officer, then that individual, that leader, is really not about safety and quality. So that's what I say. If you're going to build a new industry, globally competitive, make sure that quality is sitting there on your number 2 or 3 priorities. If it's anything less than that, then seriously you need to think about the business you're getting into.
Well, it's a very interesting point, because in the transitions to Mr. Al-Hajri about plastics, which I want to talk about next, it reminds me of when I was working in the plastics business. Our company had a rule that you could not be a plant manager. You had no ability to advance to become higher in the management scheme unless you had first been a quality manager, and which helped to encourage that kind of that you had the best people competing for those jobs. What have you found in developing your business that can help the discussion?
Well, thank you. Well, I'm a plant manager also. I worked as a plant manager before moving into this role as the CEO of Borouge. Let me just give a brief introduction about Borouge.
Please.
Borouge is the first ADNOC joint venture in the petrochemical industry. We produce polyethylene and polypropylene polymers. These are the resins that our customers then converted into useful products that we enjoy every day in our life, be it in our homes, in our appliances in the kitchen, be it for our children, the toys, or even their diapers, and our health, whether they are blood pouches or syringes in the hospitals, whether they're for infrastructure. We talked about cables today. Other than the metal part of the cable, the rest is plastic, the type of products that my company produces. Also, the water, bringing safe water to our homes, the cars that we drive, the airplanes that we fly, everything is made up of plastic. Plastic is very versatile and durable products, and also safe and hygienic. And for that, quality is extremely important in our business, in our industry. In 10 years' time, Borouge managed to establish a brand name worldwide, together with our partner Borealis, a leading petrochemical company in Europe. We have branded our product the Borstar, and it has now synonymous for high quality. Today we heard about German-made products, and I'm pleased to say that if you drive some of the German cars, like BMW, especially the X5 model, there's a 20% chance that the product in the bumper sticker is from Borstar product. There's also, we have it in Mercedes E-Class, the smart car, Volkswagen. We have also in the infrastructure around the world. For example, in New Zealand, after the earthquake, the authorities there have realized that infrastructure, pipe work, whether it is for water or for sewage, made up of plastic product, the type of product that we produce, is far more durable and can withstand seismic activities and earthquakes. And they have enacted now regulation, and they have specified our product for their use in New Zealand, and we have also in UK, we are replacing all the underground water. So it's a true, Bruges is a true example of a made in UAE with synonymous for high quality. Now we need also here within our own country, within our own UAE, unfortunately, the use of plastic or our product is still not yet far developed, especially into the infrastructure market. I have to caution you, I have high passion for my industry, and I have passion for quality, so you have to stop me if...
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. We're okay. We're okay.
Otherwise, I will talk forever. So why we are... How, you know, I said about safe and hygiene. But also our industry is very competitive in nature. As you know, we are in the commodity business. And for us to establish ourselves as a company to be reckoned with and compete with the giants like SABIC and Dow of these worlds, we had to also look at other aspects, not only quality. Operational excellence, we heard about it this morning. Operational excellence, commercial excellence, innovation. Innovation, what drives us? You talked to me before about GE plastics and the high end of plastics. Innovation is what made us take these commodity plastics and develop applications that are traditionally made with very high expensive engineering and high performance plastic. And we are taking more and more markets out of these, and this is one of the key of our success. So innovation is an important fact for us, and we are now opening it will be a landmark in Abu Dhabi, state-of-the-art innovation center that will be opened, inshallah, this year. It's construction completed, and now we are in the process of putting the equipment. And this innovation center is a huge, big, with lots of equipment. We are going to produce the same products that our converter going to produce in a smaller miniature. So we are going to produce the parts, we are going to produce the packaging for the foods, we are going to produce the pipes, and we are going to test them and ensure that they conform to safety standards and they are conforms to the highest health standards. So excellence, innovation, quality, and the last thing I would like to say is sustainability. We have to think the element of sustainability when we make our products. Our products, when we develop our products, we look around and we would like to be part of the solution to challenges around us. We see, for example, the global warming as one of the major challenge. Energy, water in this part of the world is very precious. Health, food security, and also waste. Plastic, there is no viable alternative to plastic. If we want to sustain this modern life that we are in, we are going to consume more and more plastic, and therefore waste becomes more and more issue. It is already an issue, and we have to deal with it not only as individuals and a company or as an NGO, but as a complete society, from the regulators to put in the right policies, to the infrastructure to put in the right infrastructure, and also the awareness of the public on how to deal with the waste. So we produce our product, or we develop our product based on lighter material to save energy and reduce emission, product that saves food wastage. 50% of the food that is produced in the around the world in the farms does not reach the table, and because there are lots of waste. So our products are addressing these challenges, and this is where we believe that we have been successful so far in branding ourselves and reaching the market.
One thing that excuse me, one thing I hope you've picked up is obvious to me, at least, is that when you hear these presentations, or these discussions, you can see that quality is not, as we heard before, quality is not a question of checking a box or getting a certification. Quality is a passion for excellence. It's never being satisfied with where you are. It's always realizing you have to be better. And there's no better explanation of that than these last two gentlemen the passion for the business and the passion for the success of the business and success of the country is what drives all of this. If you're just into, I'll tell you from my experience, if all you're into doing is checking a box and moving on to the next thing, you're not going to get there. It's just not going. You're going to fall behind, and we can't afford to fall behind. Rudiger, you've done some research on SMEs and how they develop. And I'd love to hear if there's some thoughts you might have on this.
Yes, I'm not really coming from SME. I'm coming from a National Institute of Standardization. I'm coming from DIN, that's the German National Standards Institute. But what I can explain to you is that 99% of our business in Germany are SMEs. You might see all the big brand names over here, but the basis for German economy is small and medium-sized enterprises. So, for these small and medium-sized enterprises, it's very important that they have a solid ground where they act on. And one of these keystones for this solid grounds are standards, as we do it with about 400 people in DIN in Germany. So we are one of the bigger standards institutes in the world, because traditionally standardization is a very important topic for all our industry, especially for the small and medium-sized enterprises, because they can exchange technical know-how by standardization. Standardization is an instrument for knowledge and transfer of knowledge. And it's also an instrument for completing legislation, especially for the small and medium-sized enterprises who are not able to comply, to have a compliance management to legal affairs. For them, it's very important that if they follow a standard, they are on a legal ground, because that's state of the art and that's acknowledged in Germany as compliance with the legal issues. So for that, what we have very often is that we have a legal affair, and to fulfill that, we use private standards, because standardization is private in Germany. We are a private organization, and we are working with about 30,000 volunteers. That's experts from our industry who work voluntarily in our committees on standardization. And that's why we have about 30,000 German standards and about 18,000 European standards, which are unified all over Europe, that you can sell according to these standards to the common market in Europe, which is very important. On the other hand, standardization can open international markets, and that's what we're trying to do. The tradition in Germany is that we want to export our goods. This is our strength, and we want to fulfill this strength. We are selling very many of our goods worldwide, and for that we are working clearly with ISO standardization to open the international market, to open the market to the Near East, to the Far East, to Asia, to the Americans, which is not always so simple as it might be in other markets, and it's also not so simple to export to China, but it's getting better nowadays. That's our task. This is the normal ground of our business. But we also found out in the last years that, especially in Europe, we might be too slow for the evolving markets. The development of products is pretty fast nowadays, and very often these new products are coming from Asia, because these are hungry economies. They are working very fast and very hard to compete with old Europe or the US. So what we set up was a program to bring innovative products earlier to a market. There is one famous example what didn't work, that is the MP3 format for music, for example. That was developed in Germany, but for a completely different purpose. The purpose, as I remember, was that we wanted to have a wide-reaching broadcasting system in Africa. That was the idea for the format. But what we couldn't get was a market for that, because we didn't see that this is also an interface for the computer, for the ICT world. So nowadays we try to develop that a little bit earlier. So what we try to do is we try to standardize very early and to find out where can we put this product in. And that means that we unify terminology at first, then we unify measurement, and then we unify interfaces. And especially unifying interfaces means that you open markets. You can do all of that with patents, but if you have a patent, you might close the market because nobody else is prepared to pay for example, the interface. So the idea is to have a patent on the product and to have an open interface to put that product into the market. One of the big success stories is the GSM standard for mobile phones. Without that standard, we wouldn't use these kind of mobile phones today, even if the standard is not valid today, but it opens a complete market for mobile communication and changed the complete world. Another simple example for standardization changing everything is a standardization for containers. When I was young, the ISO standard for containers appeared, and there was an estimation. I'm coming from the car building side. There was an estimation that maybe 5 to 10% of the transport in the future will be done by containers. It has changed that 95% is container business and 5% is the rest. And the container completely changed the trade, the worldwide trade between countries. And without containers, it's not possible to export and import these big number of goods from Asia to Europe, from Europe to Asia, and so on. So that's where we try to start. Sometimes you have to be patient with standards because it's not so easy to create them. You have to ask everybody. The basis is very democratic, legitimated. So everybody who is interested in standardization can use standards and can also sit in the committees. There's a limited number, but you have, as we call it, to include all interested parties for standardization. But when it happens that the standard appears and the community accepts that standard because the use is voluntary, you mustn't use the standard, then it might be a big success story for your economy, like it was with the containers, like it was with MP3 at the end, also for Germany, not only for the Koreans, and like it was with other things. So what we are trying to do is convincing the small and medium-sized enterprises to go into the committees, to bring in their interests, and because we like very much to integrate them, together with our government, we have built a committee especially for the small and medium-sized enterprises, for two aims: to bring them into the standards developing process, and the other aim is to inform them about standards, that they know exactly what standard they should follow, because this is one of the other big problems, because small and medium-sized enterprises, they have 1, 2, 3 engineers who want to develop. They don't want to research for standards. So we have to do that work for them. We have to bring information systems to them where they exactly know what standards should they use.
Yeah, the issue of this using standards as a competitive advantage and as a way to get into a market is something that you don't normally think of. Abdullah, we're talking in your work at the Khalifa Fund, where you're dealing with stimulating this kind of development. How do standards compliance and awareness and participation on the committees, is that something that plays with you, or is that a next step issue?
Okay. Well, if you allow me, I just want to start by saying that first, in the beginning, when Khalifa Fund was set up back in 2007, the objective was to mainly foster entrepreneurship in the mindset of the Emirati national. Looking back in time, we consider ourselves, at least in the beginning, means to an end. What do I mean by that? So you have a number of people who have come forward and said, you know, I'd like to become an entrepreneur. I'd like to explore the opportunity to start a business. I happen to be working maybe in the hydrocarbon industry, be it in the polyolefin and petrochemicals or any other oil and gas-based sector, and I see an opportunity in the plastic conversion, be it polyethylene, polypropylene, for instance. And so I'd like to start my own business and start my own plant. And we've had a few of those. So the key message here with those kind of sectors is, or these businesses, sorry, is how do you get access to finance? And that is one main element. The other is, and I would use that, how do I get access to finances? Am I bankable, to start with? And one of the key messages to that is that, am I innovative enough for the financial institutes to consider me to be feasible? And if so, how do I broaden my horizon and be able to provide a service that is has a standard and is commercially viable, not just for the local market, but also abroad. So in 2009, after developing the operating model for promoting entrepreneurship and for supporting SMEs, we've come to the conclusion that, you know, small and medium enterprise does not just govern within the paradox of the UAE. It actually moves abroad, and the mandate was amended in 2009 to be able to provide the ability to expand the services sector for SMEs outside the UAE. And today I'm proud to say that we have a handful of projects in SME that are actually providing services in the GCC, and some of them actually looking in Europe as well. But to do that, you would require the standards, you would require the ability to provide a certain threshold in the services you're giving, and also to constantly be able to provide, to have the ability to innovate and to streamline your business and to, you know, be more competitive in the market. So going back to what my colleague Abdulaziz said, innovation, sustainability, and regardless of what sector you're providing is very important, but to be also having that drive to, you know, to consider all these different, you know, forever changing dynamics of these respective sectors.
Yeah, one of the things that we mentioned in the break was you said that a lot of your the companies you're investing in are service industries.
Correct.
Now, standards have been going more into service, into management systems than they used to. That's in my framework, it's relatively new, but it's been in the last several years. Is that something that helps you to compare and evaluate different applications for funding, or is it something that can help them be successful?
Well, in the beginning, no, to be honest with you. That was not one of the criteria in providing the assistance that needed for the Emirati would-be entrepreneurs. But as they develop their model, as they look at being more competitive in the service sector, they are noticing and they understand and appreciate the need to have certain standards in place, especially when we're talking about providing these services outside the UAE. Mm-hmm. Because, going to exhibitions like in Germany, in Hanover, you can't do that without understanding, at least appreciating the European quality standards that are out there, and to say to yourself, well, am I able to, compete with a relatively similar service sector in these different EU countries? If I talk about, and I hope that my colleague, Mr. Ahmed, would allow me to, about the aerospace sector, and that is a huge opportunity for us, especially in the city of Al Ain and the eastern region. There is a suite of services the aerospace sector is looking at, and I'm sure that the more the citizens and the community within that area are aware of these opportunities, the more they'll come forward to the likes of Khalifa Fund and to say, well, I see an opportunity here. And I'm sure that the aerospace, if it be it Strata or any other company that are set up within that umbrella, are interested to acquire these services from us. What can we do? How can we get that opportunity? And this is where I'm sure that Mr. Hamid is, and his team, of course, are pushing that envelope, especially when you're talking about the female population that is very much geared towards appreciating these opportunities.
Yep. Jamie, we were also talking. You were starting to explain to me as we were walking up about the role of differentiating standards as a way to, of stepwise qualification for a company to differentiate and provide a competitive advantage for itself. Can you talk some more about that?
Yes. I think we are aware as an accreditation body, accrediting, as it were, the certification activities, the inspection activities, the testing and calibration activities of organizations that are going out there to measure whether or not companies are conforming with standards. We're aware of just how much competitive advantage is being sought or won very often by a company's ability to demonstrate that it has met a standard and possibly how well it has met a standard. Increasingly, in our experience, in the accreditation sphere, there is an appetite to have almost like a sort of star rating system. It's coming into healthcare, interestingly, whereby you can not just show perhaps your customers, your potential customers, but you can also show your regulator possibly and your insurance company that you're not just passing a standard, you are passing it exceptionally well. And I know, given what I heard earlier this morning about healthcare, I think this, I think the development of a star rating supplement to a standards-based quality system, I think really is quite an exciting move. Certainly in our experience, what it does, it not only covers safety and quality, but it also introduces a motivation to, as it were, go up the curve and to be able to demonstrate to your outside audiences that you've gone up that curve and you're higher, should we say, than your competitor. So differentiation, I think, is increasingly, I think, a dimension that is coming into the quality standards and accreditation sphere. There are other as it were, there are other audiences to whom you can appeal. It's not just your customers, possibly, and or your regulator. We just heard that, financial services do or don't perhaps take account of compliance with or conformance with quality standards. I too, we are having an interesting time with the risk insurance community, where, once again, a company that can demonstrate that through independent assessment it has met a relevant standard to risk management can very often get a reduction in the premium it has to pay to continue insurance cover. And Ali, coming back to your sort of original question, if you can actually demonstrate that you're not just scraping a pass against the standard, but you're actually, at the top of the class, then you may find that you're getting a 30% discount on your insurance cover. So this is it's just interesting nowadays, I think, how being able to demonstrate that you're meeting quality standards, especially if it's underpinned by independent verification, in other words, accreditation, is unlocking benefits that go beyond the traditional benefits being sought by those committing to quality.
So is it well, when you have a star rating, does that mean you have passed, there's a set requirement and you've passed that at a certain level? Does it also include that you are doing additional things that are not necessarily required by the standard but are that add value?
The protocols have got to be written extremely intelligently and consensually in order to establish what those stars mean. Because it's obviously very important that if you're going to send out such a potent signal that everyone understands, what those stars mean, and everyone can be confident that if you see a 3-star, should we say, certificate, that the company or the organization with it really is meeting the 3-star requirements. So design and intelligent design of the rating system is really required. But there are large areas of activity where being able to incentivize improved performance and continuous improvement really do deliver benefits. We heard about the environment earlier. And for a company to improve its environmental performance year on year in terms of its footprint, its emissions, its carbon management, whatever, that for instance, is a challenge that has been captured by ISO 14001 in the emphasis on continuous improvement. Now, theoretically, continuous improvement could involve such a negligible gain year on year that whilst this, it gets a tick in the box, it's actually meaningless to the wider audience. So it's very important you have, as it were, meaningful, measurable improvement sort of criteria that you aim people at.
Okay, we've gone as far as I think I'm allowed to go. So it's about 1:15. I thank all of you. If there are any questions you have for any of us, we can take them at the break. But I think it's time for lunch. You have a question here? No. He's just waving. Okay. There is a question here? Yes.
Louis Ala from KEO International Consultants. I've got a question actually for Lord Jamie. You mentioned that the UK government is moving towards self-regulation. Is that because of the over-regulation of health and safety in the UK? That's the first part. And the timing of it, is it the right timing taken into consideration the number of people from different nationalities from Eastern Europe coming into the UK? Do you think it's going to be the right thing to do at the moment? And if you don't mind, I've got a third question. Which model do you think is more suitable for the UAE? Is it the government-imposed regulations or the self-regulation?
Good question.
Thank you.
Jamie.
Right. Well, can I dismiss the second question? Because I think there's no connection between, as it were, the inflow of people and goods and services, as it were, from, should we say, Eastern Europe, in terms of the basic question you ask about the balance between so-called self-regulation and government regulation. I mean, the United Kingdom government's interest has been driven by a number of basic drivers. I think the first is that regulation and legislation by themselves do not deliver the level of assurance and confidence that society generally wants. Most people buying most goods or services, be they public services and you're a user, healthcare for instance, or as it were private sector goods and services, they want to know that the product or the service is not just a bare minimum in terms of legal or safety minimum, but if there are codes of practice or sort of good best practice available in that industry, most customers want to know that is being met as well. So there's an appetite for quality as well as safety. And the United Kingdom government, I think, has recognised that legislation and regulation is not so good at delivering quality, best codes of practice and accredited standards are really good can be really good at delivering quality. So there's a commitment, I think, to seeing a much more regular combination of underpinning regulation supplemented by quality standards being driven into different sectors. And the more they've understood how much good standards and quality standards can deliver, the more they've been prepared then to rein back new regulation and new legislation and allow standards, quality standards, to perform the role that regulation legislation might otherwise have delivered. So, in part, it's a recognition that standards can be extremely effective at delivering outcomes, sometimes more effective, very often more effective than legislation and regulation. If you're looking for more topical drivers, because I think that was your second question, you just got the wrong topic. I mean, the topics which do apply are financial crisis, public sector spending squeeze, a real desire to try and reduce the size of government and the cost of government, which means reducing the size of regulators and the cost of regulators. Now, if you take healthcare, environment, health and safety, I can name a whole load of areas where there is a statutory regulator. As soon as there's a good standard rolling out in the regulated sector, the regulator can genuinely begin to trim its resources because it can see immediately who is compliant with a standard that includes legal compliance as well as quality and who is not. So in fact, they can become much more risk-based, and they can target their resources more efficiently, and they can actually make savings.
Yeah, the issue of the role for mandatory standards, regulations, mandatory standards, voluntary standards, best practices, that whole continuum is something that is very fact-specific and industry-specific and country-specific. Coming from a country that can't pass any law of any kind, it makes it very simple that the continuum, at least in the U.S., has to be in the other end.